Hello, and welcome to Fusion Writing, where building character meets creating structure. And this is our map day where we get into the fun of our topic for the week. And this month we are into a whole new subject area. So I'm going to turn it right over to Victoria to get us moving. Victoria?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So, in the compass, I reminded you that we've covered the protagonist, who is your main through character. Often we just call that the main character. It's the person who experiences some sort of discovery, revelation, or transformation over the course of a story. We also talked about the villain. The villain is that main counterpoint to the protagonist. Your villain often stands in their way or has some characteristic that challenges them and forces them to grow past it. Now, I can hear you saying, but I thought an antagonist was the villain. Well, yes and no. The villain is certainly an antagonist in that the villain serves as some sort of obstacle to the protagonist. But the villain is the main obstacle. So think of it this way. Sometimes, in order to move your story along, you need to have some speed bumps or some challenges along the way. Maybe you don't want to bring your villain in too early. You want to bring them in over here, but you still need something to drive this piece of the story. That's where your antagonist comes in. So, what does an antagonist do? Essentially, they provide some sort of obstacle or challenge. So they're going to force your main character to grow in some way that they need to attain in order to meet that villain, or perhaps they need to grow internally. So your antagonist is going to spur some sort of internal character development, not necessarily something external that's a skill or something they need to acquire, but something internal that shows emotional growth, or maybe a growth of attitude or values. There's all kinds of ways that you can incorporate things that present a challenge or things that present something your character has to process and deal with, but that isn't a bad guy at all. It's just something that helps you grow your story and thereby grow your main character. So what might that look like? Well, first of all, always remember that antagonists and generally villains are genre dependent. So the kind of challenge or thing that you introduce as an antagonist in a romance may be very different if you're writing an action or a thriller kind of story, because a romance obviously could be something emotional that character needs to deal with. Whereas in our thriller, you could have car chases and bombs blowing up and extra bad guys and henchmen and all kinds of cool stuff. So the first decision you need to make for your story is, what genre are you writing in, and what do you want that story to feel like as the reader experiences it? If you want to write an emotional story, then your antagonists are going to be emotional things. If you want to write a crazy conflict-driven story, then you're going to enter all of that action-packed stuff, that fast-paced stuff that just keeps the pressure on your main character and drives them through the story. Second, and finally, on just this issue of the antagonist, is your antagonist doesn't necessarily have to be a person. Now, I'm going to save that piece for next time because we're going to get into all the different ways that you can introduce challenges not even using characters. This is going to be cool. But for today, I will wrap it up by saying, think about your antagonist just in terms of your main character. What can you challenge them with? It could be an attitude of their own. It doesn't even have to be something external. It could be an emotion or their values in that way, something they have to process and come to terms with. It could be a misunderstanding or some misinformation that they have either about themselves or the way they perceive the world. So for this week, I just want you to focus on what can I do internally to antagonize that main character? What can I put in front of them or make them deal with or confront internally that makes them grow through the story? Now, when we get to next time, we'll talk about some external antagonists. But for this week, I just want you to do that character development and focus on those internal items that might challenge your main character. With that, I'm going to throw it over to Kathleen because I have a sneaky suspicion we're going to dovetail nicely. Kathleen?
Oh my gosh, Victoria, are we ever going to dovetail nicely? Because I'm going to start us right off when we talk about honesty. I'm going to talk about what it is not and what it is. And that internal war is exactly what it is about. You see, honesty is a balance trait, and all of the balance traits have to do with a very important relationship that we have all through our lives, and that's our relationship with ourselves. This is how the character manages his own personal self. Now, he's a real person in your head. He has to be for you to be able to write a real person on your paper. And so you're going to need to know, how does your character function within his own head? Okay, now, since we know it is a balance trait, honesty is a balance trait, we're talking about internal dialogue, that very thing that Victoria said she's focusing on for now and wanting you to think about for now. Well, I'm going to give you some opportunities because we're going to be talking about what that struggle is. But before we go there, let's talk about what honesty is not. Now, I'm not about to say that this other thing doesn't exist. I'm just saying we have to put a different technical term for it, and that is truth-telling. Honesty and truth-telling are not the same thing when you're in the world of the character traits. We have to use our terms very, very precisely. And anything that has to do with a relationship where the character is involved with another human being is an empathy trait. And when the character is being forthright and truth-telling with another human being, that is the character trait of sincerity. So we're going to have it's going to have its own separate time to talk about it and its own separate word that's going to tackle it. So when we say honesty, when we're talking about character traits, honesty in a character trait is always the internal struggle. Okay, struggle for what? What is the nature of this internal struggle? It's about accepting responsibility for the character's own actions. Last month, we talked about humility, the things that the character had no power over. Now we're flipping the coin. Same coin, but we're flipping the other side of it. Now it's about, oh, but what about the things where the character did have a say in it? What about the consequences of the character's decisions? The things that the character chose to do or not to do? That's where honesty comes in, facing up to the reality of the character's own responsibility. Now, when does this get to be difficult? Well, if it's something wonderful in the character's history, no problem. You can certainly own up to having gotten all A's on your report card if your character is a child, a student. Whoa, no problem there. But what about that test that the character didn't do so well on? The student is coming home now with a bad grade on the test, a bad grade on the report card. He's going to tell some kind of story to his parents, sincerity being the issue, but when he gets back to his room all alone, he's going to have to think about this honestly. Was it my failure to study? My too many times playing video games? So that's in a kind of a trivial way what we're talking about with honesty. Of course, when it comes to honesty in adults and in fiction that portrays real life, people can have in their own personal histories some rather difficult choices that they've made in the past and some things that they have a hard time owning up to, especially if their bad behavior has injured another person that was important to them. Because then you can't become sincere with another person unless you've first been honest with yourself. And so if this character is having trouble having a sincere relationship about whatever that was with the other person, then they've got to first deal with honesty, dealing with what's going on in their own head. So think a little bit about your antagonist. Now, Victoria told you in her discussion that many times an antagonist can present something that your hero has to deal with that they have not yet dealt with in their lives. Well, what is the most natural thing that they might not have dealt with? Something where they messed up, where they didn't do as well as they possibly could. So now you have something that dovetails absolutely precisely. So with that, I will turn it over to Victoria because next week we'll talk about the voices of victory and the voices of loss. But this time we were talking about definition and struggle only. Okay, Victoria, anything to add?
Oh, that was excellent. I love it when we just fit together like peanut butter and jelly. So, this is a great exercise, regardless of where you are in your story. If your character's falling flat, if you feel like maybe you're just not getting at the emotional core of a character, or you just feel like something's missing, go through this exercise. Look at that trait of honesty and how that plays out internally. Have that character make a journal or a diary entry. Have them do a dialogue as if they're speaking with a friend, a close, trusted friend. However you need to do it, but let that character tell you what's going on inside them. And I guarantee not only will it make your story better, but it will grow your skills as a writer because you're learning to tune into that character voice in a very deep internal way. And that's just going to make better characters and better stories. So this one, guys, is super, super valuable. Bookmark this one and come on over to LiLLiPub and join us where we meet to talk about these things every single Saturday. I put up the sprint at noon Central on Zoom. And then at 1 o'clock, we workshop and we look at each other's stories. We talk about how to grow characters and build terrific stories. And you all are welcome to join us. And I suspect Kathleen has the address for you.
Yep. Come on over to lillipub.org. And there, as Victoria says, you'll find our fusion writing group. You'll also find our character trait circle, our circle for character traits, where we talk about these things as well. And you can discuss all of the character traits you've learned so far, but especially honesty over in lillipub.org. And don't forget to join us for our Zoom call on Saturday. See you over there. Bye-bye.
See ya.